All right, so welcome to Scrapbook Live. I am Megan Jacks. Today is Friday, February 28th. It's hard to believe we are already at the end of February, um, but we are. Here we are. So I have a border for you today, just one border that we're going to put together. And this is from kind of like my vault of ideas that I've shared with my customers in the past, but we're bringing it forward to do a scrapbook live with it. And I hope you see that it's a pretty versatile one in terms of it would work with almost any collection. You will want to have double-sided papers to make your little circles out of. And you want to make sure that that paper has nice contrast so that when you fold it, you can see here we folded it, we have good contrast between the two colors. So that's kind of the biggest thing you need to know in doing this is you want that double-sided paper to have a nice contrast between the folded sides, and that'll give you the best effect for this technique. All right, I'm gonna switch over here to my overhead camera and we will get going. So I am going to be using the Food Truck Fun paper pack, and that was an advisor exclusive from last summer. And it's just, I've used it before. I think I did a whole other set of borders with Food Truck Fun. It is just, I love the colors. They're fun, they're bright, they're vibrant. And lots of primary colors. And it does say Food Truck Fun, but don't let that mislead you because as you can see here, I am working with the sides of the paper that have just a pattern to them. So we have the gold stripe, we have the tonal red with dots, and then there is a piece in there that has the like a checkerboard kind of pattern, like squares, a tile pattern. So those are going to be what we're working with. You will want to have your scoring blade. It's going to make it so much easier if you have your scoring blade. And you will want to have some sort of way to create a thin border. It might be, I'm going to be using the Square Link Border Maker cartridge, but you might have a sticker strip or a thinner, you don't want anything too wide because that's going to start to cover up um, uh, hopefully if it's too wide, it will start to cover up your border itself. So once you get your border made, then maybe you can take a peek through what your options are for adding it. There's going to be a seam kind of down the middle where all your pieces are together. And it's just kind of fun if that's overlap. One of the things you could use is you could even use something like the double rickrack. In my original sample, I used the circle chain or whatever this one's called. So you have some options there. All right, so to get started here, we need to create 15 circles. So if you have the circle border punch, this makes it real easy to do. You just punch 15 circles with your circle punch. If you are need to use the custom cutting system, I believe you can use circle number 2. And of course, I'm trying to find it. I thought I had it on my desk. I did have it on my desk last night. I was using it and I'm not sure where it went. You can use circle number 2 and you can use either the blue or the green blade on I think the green blade on the inside track is going to give you the best option here. That's going to be close to using 1 3/4 to 2-inch border or circle. If you are using the custom cutting system, note that the measurements that I give here for creating the border pieces, the other parts of the borders may need to be adjusted. So all of my measurements are based on using the circle punch, which is a 1 3/4-inch circle. So just keep that in mind if you need to use different tools. All right, so I have already punched several of my circles out of my dotted paper here. I'm going to punch just a couple more. I kind of got a pre-start on some of it because some elements of this can get kind of tedious. You don't need to watch me punch 15 circles and fold 15 circles, but I will punch a couple more. The nice thing about using the circle punch, I know many of you have it. If you don't have it, in all honesty, it is probably one of the best tools to have because you can just make some lovely circles super easy. And the other part that's nice was you flip the paper over to the reverse side, you can easily see where you're going, which allows you to really maximize getting your circles cut out of the piece of paper. So I'm just going to punch one more. And I should have more than enough now to get going. I don't want to cut too much more because I need this red to be some mats for my layout. I'm going to go ahead and shove everything else I've got here to the side. I do have some blue cardstock, and I've got the bright white cardstock. I want this to be a nice light and airy layout, so we're going to stick with the white in there, which will match nicely because the part of my border does have this white background. It's the triangles on there. Makes me think of, I don't know, tortilla chips, if we're sticking with the food theme of this layout, or the paper pack. It probably won't be a food layout for me. You don't need the border maker system yet. You do need your trimmer. You need your trimmer. And with your trimmer, we are going to want to use a scoring blade. This is going to be the easiest part. If you do not have the scoring blade, I do recommend getting the scoring blade if you have Creative Memories trimmer, just because it is such, it's so easy to use. So I'm going to swap it out. I'm going to use my scoring blade. As always, when you are using your scoring blade, you want to make sure that you can, that you have a not too deep of a cutting groove in your gray mat, this matte strip that's on the trimmer. If it's too deep, what will happen is you run the risk of actually cutting instead of scoring. So if you're unsure, you can always flip it to a fresh spot, do the scoring blade, and then flip back to the spot where you cut, and you can continue cutting in the same spot. So for step number 2, we're going to line up the left edge, so this edge over on this side, with the 1-inch mark on our cutting, on our trimmer. So the 1-inch on this side, the left edge on the 1-inch mark. I'm going to hold it in place with my fingertip, and I'm going to go ahead and score. And then what I'll be able to do is I'll be able to fold it back. And you just repeat this 15 times until you've done all your circles. If you made your circles with the custom cutting system, I would probably still stick to the 1-inch. What if your circle's a little bit bigger, you may find that it's a little, you have a little bit more exposed here. So if you are using the custom cutting system, you might cut a circle, score it with that left edge on the 1-inch mark, and see what you think when you fold it. There's a lot of flexibility in this particular design, so don't get caught up too much if it looks dramatically different. You just kind of want this overall effect. And you're just going to repeat that on all your pieces. One thing to keep in mind, I have a non-directional pattern to my paper. Both sides are non-directional. My dots and my triangles are non-directional. If you have a directional component that you're concerned about, you need to keep that in mind when scoring. When I was working with the plaid paper, there you can say I worked with plaid. So I made sure when I was scoring it that my scores were parallel, perpendicular. I wanted my plaid to not be wonky. So I just made sure when I was scoring it that I kept it, I kept my plaid orientation up and down, right, left and right. So that's just something to keep in mind there. And there's not a lot of room. You really have to hold it in with just your fingertip over here on the 1-inch side. There's just not a ton of room. Just sort through here and find all of my ones that have not been scored yet. And just give those all, score them and fold them. And we will use some adhesive to go ahead and keep that fold nice and closed. We really don't want too much dimension here. I guess if you wanted to use some dimension, you could do some dimension here, maybe use one of those thin, Creative Memories had for a little bit there, the thin foam squares. You could tuck one in there if you really wanted to, but I'm going to keep it fairly flat. I don't need to go too dimensional with this. I'm going to switch back to my straight blade. I don't need my trimmer at this moment, but I'll come back to it in a little bit. Now it's all set to go. And now it's all about getting our folds. We want to go ahead and put the adhesive in there with the folds. So I'm going to use regular adhesive. And if you use regular adhesive on the shorter flap, if you put your adhesive on the flap that's folded back, you don't have to worry about it sticking out anywhere. So just keep that in mind. And you want to give it some good pressure If you want, you can use your multi-purpose tool, if I could, there it is, and you could come in and give that fold an extra little bit of pressure increase to just help it stay nice and shut. That can be helpful to let it resist popping open. Couple more that I need to adhere into, make sure they're all tucked down. I'm gonna count one. They look like little tacos in a way, the half, the fold there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 15. I've got 5 piles of 3, which is the 15. I do have an extra one that I've punched. So I've got all of the pieces that I need. So next up, I need to determine what's going to be the base color underneath my border here. In my sample, we're looking at step 4, and you can see that I use kind of that minty plaid. And for this one, I'm going to use the stripes. And so what I need to do is I need to trim this to 2¼ inches wide, 2¼ inch wide. If you wanted to, you could use a decorative blade here. If you wanted to use maybe wave, would be really fun with the circle detail, if depending on the overall vibe you're going for in your layout. I have a lot of, since I am using the, oh my goodness, here it is, this square tile paper, this paper, I decided that I wanted to keep it a little bit more, I'm going to use just a straight blade. I'm not going to worry about using a decorative blade, but I did think about it. It's always fun to just consider whether or not you want to use a decorative blade because, you know, if you keep them on the back, sometimes you forget that they're there. So you have to remind yourself that you can go ahead and use that decorative blade every once in a while. So 2¼ inches. Next thing we need to do is you need to use your ruler, and a pencil is also helpful here. I had a pencil last night. There it is. I was having to get all my stuff out of my travel bags and get myself kind of resituated. I will admit that I kind of like lounged around for a solid day and a half, didn't do too much work, did computer work, didn't do any scrapping work. I'm going to go ahead and adhere my paper, my border, to my gray cutting mat here, just so it doesn't go anywhere. And I'm going to lay it on here so that it's lined up on the right edge, because I need to be able to draw a line at 1 1/8 inch. I need to draw a line right down the middle, and that's going to help me line up my pieces. So I'm going to use my ruler. You could use a T-square, whatever you want to do. And I'm going to come here at 1 1/8 at the bottom, 1 1/8 at the top, and I'm going to draw a line. Now you can draw this line, you know, draw it lightly. You want to be able to see it, but it should be pretty much hidden when you go ahead and put your pieces on here. All right, so I've got a line right down the middle, not that you can see it, but it is there. Next thing we want to do is we want to put circles on starting in the middle. So we're going to start here at 6 inches. I am actually going to rotate my paper this direction so that it's just easier for me to see where that 6-inch line is. And I'm going to start in the middle with 6 inches, at 6 inches. And if I need to figure out, yeah, so there's about 1 3/4, slide it right up. And that's where my first piece is going to be. I'm actually going to put a little mark on either side. So that way I can come in with my adhesive, I can add adhesive here, and I know right where I'm putting it. And then I'm gonna just double check. What I'm looking for here is I am looking for an even amount, since I have this turned sideways, I'm looking for an even spacing at the bottom and the top. I can tell here that I've got a little bit more space. Well, it's actually pretty close. I think I'll be fine. Because sometimes when you draw that line, like, do I need to cover up my pencil line? Do I need to go up to my pencil line? And I think I'm going to be fine. And that's just basically what I'm doing here is I am just reassuring myself that that pencil line that I put here is truly in the middle, that I got the measurement right. Okay. Oh, Judy's got a good suggestion. She used a scoring blade. You can use a scoring blade instead of drawing a pencil line if it doesn't do, if drawing pencil lines doesn't work well for you, if that's something you have difficulty with. Once you've got the first piece on, you're going to just continue on putting down one side. All right, put one side, stick with that one side. I am using Repo adhesive in case I need to make any adjustments. It'll pop off without too much difficulty. And there will be some overhang at the end. There's going to be just a little bit of overhang at the end down there, and that's fine. I feel like maybe I put this last one, I feel like maybe I put it on crooked. There we go. And you just keep working your way down the side until you have all of one side put on. Okay, so now I have all of one side put on. Now what I need to do is my next piece, I'm going to find where the middle is. So roughly this is the middle, and I'm going to actually span right between them. So it's going to be offset. I see Cake has a question about cutting the circles in half. You could cut the circles in half. It's easier to fold them to get the effect. Technically, it's not the circles are not actually cut in half. They're cut offset so that when you fold them, it works. But if you wanted to cut them at the 1 inch, lining that left edge up and then cutting it and then reversing your pieces and then adhering them together, you certainly could. The biggest thing to know is you see here, when we put two side by side, that white bit is not a circle. And it's just the way they are, it's not, you're not folding it in half. And then putting on the next round, once you get your next piece in place, it goes together pretty quickly because you've already done the work. You just line them up so they're right and nice and tight in the middle. And then you just work your way down the line. You will have half overhang. There will be quite a bit that overhangs on the end. And I put the adhesive on the wrong side. We'll just continue building this way. So I have two pieces left. Maybe you could get away with 14 and you just do half and half, but by having 15, you're guaranteed. But now you can start to see how that starts to take shape. You will need to have your trimmer available or a pair of scissors to cut pieces off, cut the excess on the ends. I just need to remove that repo adhesive that I put on my border to let it stick. And you can just see that it worked out well having it stuck, and then I didn't have to worry about it sliding around. But there we can see is the border all set to go. I'm going to make one little adjustment. If your seam in the middle is not 100% perfect, don't worry, especially if you do plan to cover it up. If you're using a border element down the middle. If you are not going to be using a border element, you can kind of see you don't necessarily have to. I have a pretty tight seam all the way down. I don't necessarily need to use a border element. But if you want to, if you do have gaps in there because for whatever reason, right? The border piece that you put in place will cover that up. I'm just going to use a pair of scissors and I'm going to slice off everything flush at the end. And that right there is pretty much our border. I need to do a little bit of cleanup, making sure my flaps will stay closed. Now here is where I want to put something down the middle, partly because I just like the contrast. I do like the thought here. So I decided, let me show you how the rest of this layout is going to go together. So I have I mentioned I was going to be using bright white as my base. Bright white as my base. I am going to come across, this is already trimmed to the 8 inches. I mentioned here at the bottom, I said finishing the layout, you would use, I talked about in my sample, I use a piece of ivory plaid and then I trim down this tonal brown plaid to 8 by 12. And that's what I've done here. This is 8 inches tall, 12 inches wide. So my border is going to sit on top of this. Now, yes, I still need to put a piece of like give it an additional layer so it pops off this a little bit more. But one of the things I wanted to talk about was I decided to use the square link chain because I like the squares that I had here, like this fun square, and I've got some nice circles. This particular paper pattern works nice because you can see circles in my tonal red paper. They're kind of hidden a little bit, but they are there. I've got triangles, I've got squares, I've got stripes. So I've got some very just geometric patterns. So I decided to go ahead with square link because that's going to bring that same square effect that's in this paper onto my border and kind of highlight it a little bit. So this is going to sit on there and just give a nice contrast between the rounded edges and the fun square. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put some repo adhesive on my square link border. This is just done with blue cardstock and it's going to go right down the middle. One thing that's kind of nice with square link is it does have these little squares in there, the little squares that I could come if I wanted to add some circle detail. I showed this when we did the one layout a few weeks ago with Scrapbook Live. We kind of had those folded corners in and I used a square link to put on the diagonal and I did some, I used, I think from the hole punch maybe, the 1/4 inch circles would sit on there real nice if you want to add some additional detail. But that's going to sit there. Now I brought in this blue and I'm going to bring in more blue to do the background behind that additional layer. It's mentioned in step 7 where we're going to trim a 2 5/8 inch strip of a contrasting color. My border is now going to sit on top of this and give that nice contrast so that the patterns don't get lost in each other. So 2 5/8 inches. Again, this would be another one I could cut with a decorative blade. I'm going to just leave it straight. 2 5/8. If you want to have a little bit more of your border showing, you could go a little bit wider. 2 5/8 is just past the 2.5. I'm going to bring it out just a smidge. I want just a little bit more. So I'm a little bit wider than 2 5/8. And again, I'm using the blue cardstock because I wanted to bring that color in. So here you go. You can see I've got some nice contrast. And I kind of, by going just a little bit wider, my blue border here mimics the narrow part of my blue chain here of the square link. So I'll go ahead, I'm going to add some adhesive to the back of my border. And I am just going to center it on my layout or on the blue piece here. All right, so now I am going to go ahead and I'm going to add my border, or excuse me, I'm going to add my big chunky piece of this square pattern paper to my layout. And it looks like I probably have it about 1/2 inch up from the bottom. So I'll line up my bright white paper on my cutting mat. And I'm going to come up about 1/2 inch from the bottom. I think that should be good. And put that in place. I'm going to put my border on, but I'm not going to secure it in place yet. I'm going to give myself just a little bit of flexibility on where the exact placement of it is. But what I do want to do is come in and I want to cut some mats. And I show this with 3 mats on there, and I do give the sizes of those mats. So I'm going to cut, I think I'm going to do all 3 of my mats out of this red paper. And I don't think I can't get 6 inches. I was thinking maybe I could get, yeah, so I do 2 4x6 plaid mats and a 4.5 by 6.5 inch plaid mat. So I have 2 4x6 mats, which I'll be able to get out of this red paper. I can get 4x6 for sure out of this. Come over here to 4 inches wide and then cut it at 6. And those sit up here nice and right next to each other. And then I think I will come down here with a 4.5 by 6.5 inch mat. Actually, I might just do it as a 4x6. That's gonna, if I do it just as another 4x6, it lets a little bit more of my pattern stand out. My original layout, because I was using the that brown plaid paper as that big chunky piece, uh, it was, I don't know, it worked out okay. It was fine. I'm gonna go ahead, I think, and just stick with 4x6s here. Or maybe, let's try this. I'm gonna do the red ones here and I'm gonna try a blue one. Then I don't have to cut a whole new piece of paper. We'll do this 4.5 by 6.5. So I'm going to cut this out to 4.5 and 6 by 6.5. And of course, if you don't have your photos to go on your layout yet, don't worry about cutting mats. Wait till you have your photos. This is just giving you, oh, and I did it to, well, I did it to 6 inches instead of 6.5. That's fine. So I've got some space here if I wanted to come in with some sort of a title or some embellishments. If I wanted to stick with the food truck fun, there is a little embellishment pack. But one thing I noted with this when I got started, because I had it sitting here, is there's a lot of similar colors if you dived into the growing up collection. So I bought the growing up collection stuff that was more the indoor outdoor play, and then I bought the ones that were lent a little bit more boyish because Cody. So Jill's asking if my other piece of blue is longer. Unfortunately, no. I cut them both. I cut it 6 inches, so they're both 6 inches wide, which is fine. I have more room over here if I wanted to come in with some of the different elements here. So there's like, that says play all day. I could cut another piece here. I would probably wait until I have um, my, oh, how cute would this be? This would be so fun. That's like a play kitchen. I could still use it with the food truck fun. I'm trying to think if I have any pictures of Cody doing anything with uh, the play, but it is fun to do like the kitchen thing here, and then to come in with the, play all day kitchen, and then you could come in with some of the food elements out of the food truck fun. There's some really cute stuff in there, but there's lots of options to come in. The embellishments out of the, I think this was indoor play, are really super cute. And of course, all sorts of ways that you can kind of put things together and make it work for you. You can, oh, this is super cute, like the Kiss the Cook. I mean, just ways that you could supplement, indoor play, mixing and matching, even if you have those food truck fun elements. If you thought about, if you have kids or grandkids that have done the play with the food, where they're the play cooks and things like that, think about it for food truck fun. If you happen to have that in your stash, and you're thinking, well, I don't really do food trucks, but I mean, I do food trucks, just not all the time. All right, so that is pretty much the layout here. I'm going to work on adding some embellishments here. There's lots of things you could do. I could also just come in with a title, just like I did in the original, the sample layout. Obviously, the pattern paper there was a little bit calmer, so I could come in with one of those laser cut words, the happy. That worked out fine. Here I've got a little bit more of a bolder pattern going on, so I need to keep that in mind with whatever I'm doing here. I could come in with a half circle if I wanted to, if I felt like I needed to give the thing. Let me actually, I'm now really, I had an idea and I don't know whether I can pull it off. Let me see if because you could almost come in and do this circle technique. Let me see. I'm going to have to crack open my other pack of Food Truck Fun paper because I need a bigger piece. I need a piece of the red. I'm tempted to try mimicking the folded circle as an element right here on this side. You see how that half shape could sit there? And what if we did that half element that mimics this next to this? So let's take a peek. We're going to go off the rails a little bit. We're going to improvise. This is not planned. I normally like to have everything very planned. Let's see, I need my blue custom cutting blade. And the reason I'm going with blue is going to give me the biggest. And I see Angie asking, can I cut this out of one of my mats? And the reason I'm going to say no is because I made my mats 4 inches wide. And this, I need to cut probably a 4.5 inch circle because this is 4.5 inches long, this side. It's 4.5 by 6. So I want to cut a 4.5 inch wide circle. And to do that, I need to use the blue blade on the outside track here. It'll be too big. So it's okay. I will admit I maybe stocked up a bit on this paper pack just because it was so cute. All right. So there we go. I'm going to wing it. I'm just going to wing it. I'm just going to fold it and not really pay attention. I'm kind of eyeballing what I think. I like that. Kind of a taco on the side. I could lay it over just a little bit and let's just see what it looks like. My other option is I could come over like this. Let's put some adhesive on here so that it stays in place. And I will use so there we go. So if I needed to, if I felt that was a little too wide, I could tuck it under a little bit if I want to narrow it up a little bit. If I think that's too much, I could bring it in a little bit tighter. And a fun idea there. And then if I wanted to come in, it gives me a little bit of a calmer space maybe if I wanted to come back in with that kitchen element and so forth. Just some options there to be able to do that. I could have also, if I really wanted to, I could also have made a small circle with the journaling paper. Would have been a fun way to do it too. off to the side here. But what it's allowing it to do is just kind of bring that shape from this side out of our border, bringing it over here to the opposite side. All right, so that's kind of where we're going with this. Kind of a fun little way to just put a layout together. You could expand this, of course, to 2 pages. You can redo the orientation. You can always change things to the side. If you have more horizontal than vertical photos, you just kind of play around with it. These are 4x6s. If you need to peekaboo pocket the whole kit and caboodle, you can do so. You can put the whole thing inside of a peekaboo pocket and have that ability to add more photos. All right. Okay, so that is Scrapbook Live for today, guys. Thanks so much for joining me. I am very, very excited to, next week is going to be a lot of fun. I worked on some stuff this past weekend in Philadelphia, kind of came up with an idea that I'm excited to share with you guys. I thought about saving it for a power hour, but I only have 30 minutes. And I think this one, it's not going to be hard, but it is going to be a little bit more, I want to take our time doing it. So for next week, your homework is to, as you're scrapbooking and you're thinking, oh, I don't need this photo anymore, I want you to save those photos that you decide that could just go in the garbage, or the blurry photos, or whatever your rejected photos. I want you to save those for right now. Just create a little stack, because you're going to want to practice the technique that we're going to be working on next week. You will also, if you have one, you will want to have a photo labeling pencil and a piece of, keep one of your cardstock, like the kind of cardboard chipboard, or out of, if you have the original map packs that we had before, it had that little bit of cardboard in there, keep one of those, just because you'll need that for next week. All right, I'll be posting that project. I'll be getting it ready to go on to Facebook, and you guys get a peek at what it is. It's kind of fun, especially, you know me, I got lots of sports layouts. I'm always thinking of ways to make things that can be kind of sporty, but this one does definitely carry over into other types of things, not just sports. All right, so that's all I have. Judy's like, she just used all of her ex-son-in-law photos. That's perfect. If you have, we will show you how to be chopping people out of photos. Okay, that's what I have for you guys today. Thanks so much for joining me. I'll be back next week, as I mentioned, with that project. I will be getting it up onto Facebook so you guys can all like and whatever with the event. And of course, you'll get your email reminder next week as well. All right, take care, everybody. I will see you soon. Just a quick reminder, free shipping is still happening with Creative Memories. So if you haven't already, go ahead and get your orders placed with all of those products you've got on your wish list. It's a great time to do it. You'll save yourself some shipping. Take care, everybody. I'll see you next week.